briefing note which exposed these threats to the MP's family 2 years ago. And yet the diplomat that worked to punish a Canadian MP's family is still in Canada when the Prime Minister could have expelled him. Why didn't he expel this diplomat?
Yeah! Right, honourable.
In an independent manner, and I entered into contact with the member for Wellington Halton Hills to reassure him on this subject. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition
reached out to reassure him on the subject. That might have been something to do 2 years ago. 2 years ago, 2 years ago, in July of 2021, the government had a CSIS document showing that an agent for the dictatorship in Beijing was arranging to sanction and punish the family of a Canadian MP because of how he voted on the floor of the House of Commons. And yet,
to fulfill the minister's accountabilities as outlined in the CSIS Act. In general terms, the minister expects to be consulted or informed regarding any action on which a deputy head would normally involve his or her minister. So my question again is very simple. When did the public safety minister or his office first become aware that a PRC diplomat was targeting a member of this House and their family?
You have put the name of the two individuals who were the face of the donation and in whose name these conferences would be held.
In any of your board meetings, did any of the board members or any of the senior staff, including legal or financial or otherwise, raise concerns around the discrepancy and the sensitivity of the donations?
I do not recall that they did, and the other thing that I will say is that there were controls in place in the foundation to deal with the issue of receipting on donations. As you'll see from the package, the correspondence was between two more junior employees of the foundation on the receipting, along with a representative of the China Cultural Industry Association who was working for Mr. Zhang, who simply said, could you please send it to this address? So when you say instructions from China, they were about what address to send them to.
Was the address in China the address of the Chinese Cultural Industry Association?
The address that we have, and the only research I've been able to do, is it's the same address, ultimately, as the address given for Mr. Zhang in this Canadian government.
Sure, but you didn't, I'm sure a Google search or something would probably bring up. I just want you to have the opportunity to put on the record that it wasn't the Chinese Cultural Industry Association, because you would recognize the relationship between the Chinese People's Republic of China and this association, right, as being
I would recognize that it's what I would call a soft power organization.
But because the Prime Minister has given diplomatic immunity and credentials to this agent, he's able to act with impunity right here on Canadian soil. And even if you believe the Prime Minister's far-fetched claim that he didn't know about this until Monday, since Monday, he has not kicked out that agent. Why?
The Honourable Minister for Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, I'm afraid the Conservative leader is inventing the laws around diplomatic immunities. More importantly, it is this government that has introduced new laws to provide CSIS with the powers that are necessary to protect parliamentarians, to protect Canadians from foreign interference. It is this government that has raised the bar.
because our members work hard. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Minister, not for his incompetent minister.
Okay. I just want to remind all the members in the House that when they're asking questions or answering them, to try to be respectful to each other. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition, please continue.
The question was for the Prime Minister, and he should have the courage to stand up and answer it. The former head of CSIS indicates that a briefing note with explosive revelations about a threat against the family of a member of Parliament would have been brought to the Prime Minister's top advisors, and his top advisor says everything is brought to him. It is impossible to believe that he was not made aware of these threats 2 years ago when they were documented by his own intelligence services. How does the Prime Minister expect us to believe such a ridiculous claim?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, does the member opposite really think that by exaggerating rhetoric and lobbying attacks at the government that he's doing any service to the member for Halton Hills?
Speaker, in reference to the July 2021 intelligence assessment, the Prime Minister said this morning that CSIS made a determination that it wasn't something that needed to be raised to a higher level. But former CSIS Director Dick Fadden said the assessment would certainly have been sent to the Departments of Public Safety and Foreign Affairs and the Prime Minister's National Security Advisor, which appears to have been David Morrison, the current Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs. Will the government confirm the Prime Minister's assertion this morning that the intelligence assessment never made it out of CSIS?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I can certainly confirm that we are guided by the advice that we get from our intelligence agencies, which is strictly governed under the Security of Information Act, as my colleague across the aisle knows. And it's important that we navigate this very carefully because when we talk about matters that relate to national security, it's people's lives who are at stake. The people who work for CSIS, the people who work within the law enforcement community, the people that work in this chamber, including the member for Wellington Halton Hills. That's why we briefed him on numerous times. We'll continue to ensure his safety and security so that we can protect the people that work within these institutions.
Member for Wellington Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, again, Dick Fadden said today the assessment would certainly have been sent to the Departments of Foreign Affairs and Public Safety and to the Prime Minister's National Security Advisor. And Sherry Henderson, a CSIS Assistant Director, recently testified, quote, "I can say that we definitely have seen specific cases of hostile activities of states against politicians. In those specific cases, we definitely brief our government on the challenges that are being faced." How are we supposed to reconcile these differing and conflicting accounts?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I would hope that the member opposite would be able to reconcile that with his own personal experience, which not only within the last 24 hours he received a briefing, but on a number of occasions he has received support from CSIS to make sure that...
I'm having a hard time hearing the Honourable Minister. The Honourable Member for Wellington Halton Hills asked a question which he deserves to hear the response to. So I'm just going to ask everyone to bring it down a notch and listen to what the Honourable Minister has to say. The Honourable Minister for Public Safety, from the top, please.
Mr. Speaker, as I was saying before I was interrupted by the Conservatives across the aisle, the member opposite has received briefings from CSIS on a number of occasions. That is one of the ways in which we are attempting to address the concerns that have been raised around foreign interference. More importantly than that, we have put in place people, resources, new laws, and transparency mechanisms to shine a light on the way in which we are combating foreign interference so we can protect the people in this chamber as well as their loved ones. That is our paramount objective.
Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Laredo Lakes.
The only light that's being shone is by the Globe and Mail on this government's failure to keep parliamentarians informed and safe when foreign actors are threatening them. We heard very clearly from CSIS officials at committee that, quote, "In those specific cases, we definitely brief our government on the challenges that are being faced," end quote. We heard from the Prime Minister's own Chief of Staff that the Prime Minister is a voracious reader of all the briefing notes that come across his desk. Are we actually supposed to believe that the Globe and Mail gets briefed by CSIS before the Prime Minister?
The Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, those types of absurd suggestions don't advance this debate. Neither does the suggestion that we don't care about the members opposite or their safety and security. As I said yesterday, there are intense debates in this chamber about both foreign and domestic policy. But rest assured that the members of this government will do everything in its power to fight against foreign interference, to protect the members that work in this chamber and their families so that we can defend our democratic institutions. That is something that we should all be united behind.
Member for Leeds, Grenville, Thousand Islands, and Laredo Lakes.
But the exact opposite has proven to be true. For 2 years, they failed to inform the member for Wellington-Halton Hills about these threats against his family. This is an attack on all parliamentarians. And we've now known based on the reports in the Globe and Mail, that the government knew 2 years ago. So the question is very simple. And instead of the minister carrying on with non-answers, he needs to be very direct. When did the minister's office become aware of this specific instance?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we've been very clear that as soon as we became aware of the specific issue regarding the member of Wellington and Halton Hills, that we took decisive actions. We reached out. We spoke to the member opposite. We offered him a briefing. We made sure that that briefing occurred. It occurred yesterday. It was not the only briefing that the member opposite received. That's because we want to be sure that we can protect him, his family, and indeed all of the members in this chamber so that they can do their job, so that they can represent their constituencies, so that we can defend our sworn obligation to uphold this democracy.
The Honourable Member from Mégantic-L'Érable. Mr. Speaker, on March 7th at committee, the Minister of Foreign Affairs said, "Let me tell you that if we had the slightest evidence of wrongdoing, we would immediately expel the diplomats. The government has known for 2 years that an agent threatened a member of Parliament and his family after a vote in this House. Since Monday, all of Canada knows that this Prime Minister wanted to..."
I mean, this committee should probably meet every day, every week, every year, because the amount of things, I'm afraid to say that, frankly, this is a waste of time because there is not a foreign interference issue here at the Foundation, and I know the documentary record will make that clear as it's disseminated.
I think that's your time, Mr. Baines. So that concludes our first round, and for the record, I'm prepared to meet every day if we have to get to the bottom of this.
Frankly, this is a waste of time because there is not a foreign interference issue here at the Foundation, and I know the documentary record will make that clear as it's disseminated.
So like we've done with other witnesses where we've had them for 2 hours, we're going to reset the clock. We're going to start on our 6-minute rounds, to be fair to every party at this committee. And our first 6-minute intervention is for Mr. Cooper. Go ahead, sir. You have 6 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Trudeau. Let me say at the outset that your assertion that Beijing diplomats were present at meetings with the Foundation in the negotiation of the donation to provide translation services to the donors to be completely unbelievable. It simply is absurd. But you further stated that Millennium Golden Eagle Inc. Canada, the source of the donation, is a Canadian company in good standing. This is a shell company based out of a house in Dorval that is controlled by the China Cultural Industry Association, which is part of the United Front Work Department. Receipts were sent to Hong Kong and then Beijing to the very same address of this United Front Work Department controlled company. So do you consider this company to be one of good standing, really?
Montreal's belief in the matter quite seriously.
Yeah, well, I don't think any Canadian who's serious about Beijing interference would view such a company to be a company in good standing, and they certainly wouldn't consider it to be a true Canadian company.
If they had wanted to interfere, I would have seen traces of that.
Mr. Trudeau, I controlled the time. I asked the questions, you answered them. Now, Mr. Chair, changing gears, on September 10th, 2015, Elise Comtois, Executive Director of the Trudeau Foundation, sent an email to the Executive Committee hoping to quickly organize a signing ceremony on Monday, September 14th, 2015. In that email, you were specifically mentioned to represent the Foundation's board and the family. This rushed meeting of a signing ceremony with the donors just happened to coincide with a time when your brother and the Liberal Party were surging in the polls, when your brother was on track to realistically become the Prime Minister of Canada, which he did a month later. That signing ceremony did not take place, and on Friday, September 11th, 2015, Natalka Harris of the Trudeau Foundation emailed you to explain that there were still outstanding issues, not between the Trudeau Foundation and the donors, but with the University of Montreal. Nonetheless, she had asked that you fly from Vancouver over the weekend to meet with the donors anyway to express appreciation for the forthcoming gift. So did you have that meeting? Did you fly to Montreal?
I live in Montreal, so there's an
You were
inaccuracy.
in Vancouver at this time.
No, I don't remember that meeting. Yes, that's right. I remember watching that debate in September where I suddenly realized, oh my God, my brother's going to become Prime Minister. It was a moment I will never forget. But no, I don't remember that meeting. I must say that I can even share the emails. When the first time that Université de Montréal contacted me, there was an urgency. They wanted immediately to meet with these donors because they wanted immediately to get the money to launch $1 million scholarship at Université de Montréal.
Well, you said that you met with Zhang in June of 2014.
Correct.
How many times did you meet with Zhang after
I
that?
met him at the signing ceremony the second time.
Okay, so you did not meet with him in 2015.
In 2015, it didn't work out. And as I say, there was great urgency in 2013 when the first email I got was that there's a great opportunity with serious Chinese, people that want to donate to the universities.
Okay.
Please meet us at your earliest convenience.
On May 19th, 2016, Justin Trudeau held a Cash for Access dinner in Toronto attended by Zhang Bin. Were you in attendance?
No, I was not. I heard about it like many of you in the newspapers, and it was a moment of realizing, you know what, no more academic diplomacy at the Trudeau Foundation.
Why would Zhang Bin be at a fundraiser for Justin Trudeau, a Cash for Access event, even though he is not a citizen of Canada? He's a Chinese national who was unable to donate. Why would he be there?
I bet you he wanted a photo with the Prime Minister to show to his friends.
A photo of the Prime
But you'd
Minister.
have to ask him.
And-
you know
and
what?
then-
And I have no
and then-
reason to doubt that this man never tried anything that would look like interference. So as far as I'm concerned, he's an honorable man.
Nothing that would look like foreign interference, and then 2 weeks later, less than 2 weeks later, suddenly a $70,000 check to the Trudeau Foundation.
That had started in, the process of that had started in 2014. And they had wanted to get everything done very quickly at the beginning, as I was saying. They had wanted to do it at l'Université de Montréal. The Trudeau Foundation, from his point of view, was an unfortunate add-in. Here's a new prime minister. He's a rich guy. He likes being in fancy occasions. I think he wanted his photo with him.
Suddenly is there at a Cash for Access.
Do you think he discussed policy?
Yeah, I'm sure he did.
Got 5 seconds, Mr. Cooper.
Okay, well, thank you.
Okay.
The Minister of Foreign Affairs has said that she is assessing interests in determining whether to expel the Beijing diplomat who arranged to punish the family of the member for Wellington, Halton Hills. The Minister has a choice to make because the number one priority of this government ought to be the safety and security of Canadians. And by allowing this Beijing thug to remain in Canada, they are putting Chinese Canadians at risk. So when will they get their priorities straight and send him packing today?
The Honourable Minister for Foreign Affairs.
Of course, when it comes to foreign interference, interference. We will never tolerate it, and that's exactly what I said to my counterpart when I met with him a month ago, and that's also why we summoned the Chinese ambassador a bit earlier today. Now, Mr. Speaker, we're also, as a thoughtful government, assessing all the interests that are at stake. Why? Because we know, based on to Michael's experience, that when it comes to the PRC, they will take action and will have an impact on our diplomatic, consular, and economic interests. That being said, all options are on the table, including the expulsion of diplomats. Thank you so much.
The honourable member for St. Albert Edmonton will now be last. We'll now go to the honourable member for Kitchener Centre. I want to remind the honourable members. The honourable member, well, I'm not going to say honourable member. Did he want to withdraw that, please? Do you want to withdraw that? No. Order. What's his writing? Grand Prairie, Mackenzie, that you do not respect the chair. The chair will not recognize you while you're in this House. The honourable member for Wellington Halton Hills, please continue.
Mr. Speaker, I've just been informed by the National...
Withdraw and apologize. The chair will not recognize you for the next, well, no, until you do, indefinitely. The honourable member for Wellington Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, I've just been informed by the National Security Advisor that the CSIS intelligence assessment of July 20th, 2021 was sent by CSIS to the relevant departments and to the National Security Advisor in the PCO. This report contained information that I and other MPs were being targeted by the PRC. This contradicts what the Prime Minister said yesterday. He said CSIS made the determination that it wasn't something that needed to be raised to a higher level because it wasn't a significant enough concern. Will the Prime Minister correct the record that this report and information was sent to the departments and to the Privy Council office?
The Honourable Minister of Public Service.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my colleague for sharing that update with this chamber. I can also assure him that, as the Prime Minister said, and I said earlier this week, that we found out on Monday of this week, which is why we acted very quickly and decisively to reach out directly to the member for Wellington Halton Hills, make sure that he was offered a briefing, had that briefing happen, and we will continue to work with him to address and mitigate any concerns around foreign interference, because every member in this chamber deserves to be able to do their work in representing their constituencies in a manner that is safe and secure.
The honourable member for Wellington Halton Hills.
Mr. Speaker, CSIS has been advising the government, the departments, the Privy Council Office, the National Security Advisor, deputy ministers, that foreign agents in Canada, foreign diplomats in Canada are presenting a threat to Canadian MPs in this House of Commons. In fact, the 2022 intelligence report of CSIS today says that these threat actors must be held accountable for their clandestine activities. And we also will continue to inform national security stakeholders and all Canadians about foreign interference. So why is the government not listening to the advice of CSIS and not listening to the advice in the reports that are being distributed here?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, taking concrete action, and in fact, as my colleague, I hope, would know, the Minister for Global Affairs earlier today summoned the Chinese ambassador to ensure that we're clear about any consequences around hostile activities or foreign interference, and that is very much consistent with Canada's strong record in condemning this kind of behaviour. Moreover, we'll continue to work with all parliamentarians to protect the people that work in this chamber so we can uphold our democracy.
The Honourable Member for Mégantic-Lérable. Mr. Speaker, it's a dark day for democracy. Rarely have we seen a political party fall so far so fast. A member of this House is the victim of intimidation from Beijing, and the members for Winnipeg North and Kingston and the Islands, on behalf of this government, on behalf of this Prime Minister, have continued the trend.